Hi, gang. Morgan Wright here, CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. We go by the National Center or Open Unsolved, or just find us anywhere right here at openunsolved.org. Hey, what I want to do today, I'm going to do a few of these segments as we get moved towards our launch, which is going to be in August. But we're doing a demo of this on July 30th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Law enforcement, the public, we need both of you on here. Register down here, openunsolved.org. I'll get you in there. And the other thing we're looking for too, especially from the law enforcement side, is people to be beta testers. It's about a 2 hour segment that what we'll have is our development team working directly with us on a call, kind of similar like Zoom or Teams, probably do Teams, but where we'll go through this and we really want to look for functionality to make sure everything works, make sure the data is getting in there as we expect, making sure the outputs are as we expect. So your help would help us. But let me today, what I want to do is explain about how Holmes, our platform, which by the way, as I said, named after Sherlock Holmes, the first private consulting detective, one of my favorite people of all time. Uh, I have to show you my beard mug I have for him sometime. Actually, Hercule Poirot, the other famous detective. But what I want to do today is talk about how you can get involved without being involved. And this is from a citizen standpoint. How would it feel if you knew that your efforts led directly to solving a cold case homicide? How would you feel if your efforts led directly to taking a dangerous fugitive off the street? How would you feel if your efforts led directly to finding a missing person, whether it's a child or an adult, or identifying an unidentified person, somebody who's been sitting out there in a morgue somewhere with no name? Family doesn't know where they're at. How would that make you feel, right? And a lot of people go, well, how can I do that? Here's how you don't do it. You don't do it by watching organizations, and this is how we're going to help them. You don't do it by just throwing stuff out there and hoping somebody sees it, right? That's hope. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is a tactic, but it's not a strategy. The other thing it's not a strategy is expecting me as the citizen to scroll through 18,000 websites and Facebook pages and reading everything that's out there. Why is it you just can't notify me when I have a connection to a case? That's the whole purpose of Holmes. 6 degrees of separation. We want to get it down to those 1 to 2 degrees to make sure that we show you every case you're connected to. But here, this is how you as a citizen can get involved without being involved. One of the things that we can do is law enforcement can actually do a couple things. They can actually create a volunteer group that could actually work inside the law enforcement agency. They would be part of the law enforcement organization. You'd have an account. You could enter cases. You could enter locations. You could manage those and even see the tips that come in. Now, with Crime Stoppers, Crime Solvers, great folks. I used to, as I said, I ran the Crime Stoppers phone on my desk, solved a lot of cases that way. But the challenge with that too is that it's very hard to manage those tips, right? Where do they come from? Who gets to see those? So we wanted a unified way to handle all tips on all cases. So we can actually create what I call a targeting group. Let's say that I want to create Morgan's Raiders. We'll just call it that, just come up with a name. And I want to put people into that group. And what we want to do is we want to target fugitives. So I can create, me as the administrator, I will create a group that would be somebody else would be a co-administrator. They would help manage this group, get people involved. But what we would do is only target fugitives. We'd put fugitives in there. Here's the great thing. It's all open source. It's all public information. A fugitive that's listed on the FBI site, the fugitive that's listed on the U.S. Marshals Most Wanted, their top 15, rewards for justice. If an agency puts it out on their webpage, it's fair game, right? So what we want to do is make sure that we get these tips back into the hands of law enforcement that people can use it. Here's how you get involved as a citizen. You are actually now doing the open source research. You're finding the locations. Remember, we're not investigators, we're case coordinators. So you're a citizen case coordinator in a specific targeting group, and we're going to go after fugitives. So I give you the fugitive, one of the FBI top 10. You do the research on that FBI top 10 person. We get the information in there. The administrator gets the tips, just like it would be on Crime Stoppers. Somebody has to answer the phone, somebody gets the email, right? So we're going to make sure all these tips go back to one location so we can make sure we get it to the U.S. Marshals. For example, one of my good friends is a senior person at the U.S. Marshals, and one of the people I've been working with, she just got promoted into the position. Congratulations, Maggie. I won't say the rest of the name for operational security reasons, but she's my neighbor, doesn't live too far from here, runs the program that all the tips are going to come into, all these cold cases that we're going to work on. So you as a citizen, your efforts are going to lead directly to developing the tips that we send to the U.S. Marshals that allow them to go out and as we say in law enforcement, put the habeas corpus on somebody, take them into custody. That's going to come from your efforts. Nobody's going to know who. Here's the great thing about it, that when we talk about anonymity, nobody, that fugitive's not going to know who you are. They're not going to know who's in the case, because this is all behind, in a sense, a firewall. We protect everything, the identity of the users. So when you have an account, it's being protected by us. Nobody knows who's in that account. Nobody knows who's putting that case up on the page. Nobody knows who's putting those locations in there. So this is how we protect your anonymity, not only as a citizen. If you want to leave a tip, there's three things you can do as a citizen if you have information about a crime. You can do nothing, which we suggest you don't do. We would love for you to be able to submit this information. Number two, you can give the information but stay anonymous, which is something if you choose to do, that's great. Or number three, you could give that same information but say, hey, if you want to contact me, here's my name, here's my phone number, here's my email address. We'll provide a way. And in fact, in the future, one of the things we're going to enable is secure real-time chat. We're going to be a cutout, so law enforcement will never be able to see who the tipster is, but you'll be able to have a real-time conversation, so you can go back and forth, like in a text message, or instant messaging type of thing. But that's coming up in the future. But you as the citizen, what can you do? You can get involved without being involved. And when we start doing this, we're going to be looking for volunteers in every state around the area. Now, in our targeting groups, we're going to be targeting at a high level from a national level. So when we get, like, say, an urgent case to where there's a fugitive, like what America's Most Wanted used to do. By the way, I'll show you some stories later, show you some video later of the solution I built that was featured on the 1000th episode. I did a lot of work with John Walsh with his folks in the TIP Center, the Crime Center down here in Washington, D.C. We did some great work, got a lot of good results out of it, but we have to modernize, right? We can't stay doing the things that we've always done, because if you keep doing what you've always done, you keep getting what you've always got, which is there was no way to unify everybody's knowledge in one place. If you have a Crime Stoppers, like say in my area, Loudoun County, Virginia, it's very hard. What if the information needed to solve my case sits in Texas, sits in Florida, sits in Washington or Oregon, right? How do I unify the collective knowledge of everybody out there to get this done? So this is how we do it. We put all the dots in one place. You can't connect the dots unless you collect the dots, right? So we're going to put the dots in one place. So when you have a law enforcement agency over here putting a case in, it goes into HOLMES. When you have a citizen targeting group helping out, citizen case coordinator putting information in, it goes into HOLMES, right? Citizens, guess what they connect to? They connect to HOLMES. And what they do is, once you put your information in there, once you say, hey, here's where I was born, here's where I went to school, here's where I went on vacation. You put some locations of importance to you, locations of significance to you, including if you want to put your home address in there too. Law enforcement can't get to your address. Nobody can. We simply use your address to convert it into a zip +4. So your 5-digit zip plus the 4-digit zip. We just put a pinpoint in the map. Doesn't identify who you are. You can do that too, so that you can see the crimes that are happening around you. One of the great features you'll be able to do too in the search bar, as a citizen, imagine you want to go on vacation and you want to go in a certain place. You're going to be able to type the address of that location in, and we're going to pull a map to show you, here's all the unsolved cases around you. Is it a safe place to go, or is every time you turn around there's a robbery having every 30 seconds that they still haven't solved? That might make you think a little bit different about where you go on vacation, but at least you get that information. But guess where that's going to come from? That's going to come from law enforcement on the one side, with citizens maybe as volunteers inside the agency helping them, or on the other hand, we're going to create targeting groups to where you as the citizen can be part of a group, and we can have multiple groups. We can have groups in Virginia, in Florida, in Kansas, which I'm from, by the way. Go K-State, go Wildcats. I know, Rock Chalk Jayhawks, sorry folks, Wildcats. But I went to Fort Hays State. What does that tell you? Tigers, go Tigers. So we want to be able to do these groups in all of these different states to where they can focus on the crimes there, right? But guess what? When you put those cases into HOLMES, it connects to everybody out there. It's like when law enforcement, many people have watched so much TV now, everybody gets DNA, right? So how does DNA work? DNA works both on known and unknown profiles. In other words, they take me in there, they do a buccal swab. That's inside baseball for some of you folks. It's a swab that I can do on the inside of my mouth, get enough DNA material so that I can do a profile. And guess where that profile goes? It goes into a system called CODIS, Combined DNA Indexing System. Guess what CODIS does? I take a known profile, I put it in there. One of the things it scans for, it says, are there any other matches? Nope. Morgan doesn't match any cases. But my profile sits there. The other thing I can do is, if I'm a detective out at a crime scene, CSI, you've seen them, they'll take swabs, they'll create a DNA profile. and it's unknown. All they know is it came from the crime scene. It could be touch DNA, some kind of transfer. It could be blood, whatever. But they take it. It's unknown. They put it into CODIS to see, is there a hit? CODIS is going to tell you basically three things. There's no hit. There's nothing else in there. Yes, there's a hit, but it's to another unknown sample. Or yes, there's a hit, but it's to a known sample. So that's the other. So this is like information DNA. We're taking information DNA, which date, location, time, demographics, relation. There's five things. We're starting off with date, location, time, because those are the things that we can track easily. Those are things that are very specific. If you and I both like the same band, hopefully it's not Coldplay. If you and I both like the same band, that's a relationship, right? There could be things around demographics like we belong to maybe some of the same groups, or we work at the same place but not in the same location. But at the end of the day, location is something we can physically track. If a car is recovered from a robbery, I can physically say, here's where the car was recovered. I can put a pin in the map, maybe do a 5-mile radius around that, say, hey, if you're you may be connected to this case because here's where we recovered the car from the robbery. Here's the car. Here's some information about the case. Do you have any information? And then you as the citizen can leave a tip. Now, let's suppose that you were visiting your cousin in Topeka, Kansas. I'll pick on Kansas again. You were visiting your cousin in Topeka, Kansas. You say, hey, look, and eventually we're going to have a mobile app that's coming out. That takes a lot of work, a lot of development. We're still raising more money from that from the government and the private side. But you'll have a mobile app and you'll be able to do like this. You'll be able to go, I'll put this location in where I'm at. It just drops a pin into our database, not specifically identifying the house, but that zip +4 area. And then you could drop a pin to say, hey, I stayed here for 2 weeks. Now you travel back to Virginia. What happens if a case is put in there 3 weeks later that you may know something about because you thought, damn, man, this looks a little suspicious. Here's a guy in a car. He just got out of it and he ran, but I don't hear any sirens. Doesn't look like anything dodgy, so I'm just going to go on. Well, what happens if 3 weeks later there's a case that's put in there? It goes, hey, we recovered this car. This car is tied to a murder. It's tied to an assault. It's tied to a kidnapping. And you have information on that case. What are the chances that you being all the way back in Virginia, you're going to hear about this case back in Topeka? The only way you'd hear from it is if whoever you're staying with picks up the phone and goes, hey, Morgan, did you hear about this, right? That's chance. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is maybe it's a tactic, but it's not a strategy. You cannot use hope to ensure that these connections are made. But the way the connection would be made is Topeka PD puts that case in there. They recovered the car here. They put a 1-mile radius around where that car was recovered. You were within that 1-mile radius. Now you're in Virginia 3 weeks later and you get this notification. And by the way, not only did you do that, but you being the intrepid little detective that you are, you go, here's my pin. I don't know, but I think that means something. I'm going to write down the tag number. Maybe it won't mean anything. Maybe you put a note on your phone. I've done that before too when I see dodgy vehicles, dodgy people. And all of a sudden now you've got a tip that's going to help solve this case. How would that you as the citizen who helped enter that case or put that information make you feel? How would it make you feel as the person that says, even though you're 6, 7 states away, you can now give information that's going to help solve a serious crime, right? You can get involved without being involved. Still, it's anonymous, same way like with Crime Stoppers, Crime Solvers. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to do anything. One of 3 things, right? Do nothing, do something anonymously, do something with your name. That's totally up to you. But here's the difference. You as the citizen now can get involved. You can put these cases in there. You can put these locations in there. You can become part of a targeting group to where we actually go after the worst of the worst, the bad guys, the bad girls. We help law enforcement. You can create a relationship too. This is one of the things I'll help you with. You will create a relationship with law enforcement, and law enforcement, like with Crime Stoppers. If you're in a Crime Stoppers or Crime Solvers organization, here's why you ought to be taking every one of your cases, getting a hold of openunsolved.org right down here, info@openunsolved.org. That all comes to me. We'll have a bigger team later. But we'll get you set up in a group. You can take all your Crime Stoppers cases, put it into your group so that you can now start networking with other crime solvers and Crime Stoppers. You still have your site. You still have your identity. If the case gets solved, you can still reward that person with money. But what I'm saying is that otherwise your information sits here in a silo and it doesn't connect to anything. How powerful would it be if I could take that same case and instead of exposing it to 10 people, expose it to 1,000 people? What are the chances of you solving that case when 1,000 people see that case as opposed to 1 or 2, right? So that's the big thing. I'm going to keep this under 15 minutes because we got to get it placed on certain areas. So, hey guys, Open Unsolved, register. We'll see you soon.